Welcome to Best Boys, a film podcast. An amateur film study podcast for the average Joe, the buffest buffs, and the cringest bingers. I'm your host, JP, and I'm joined by my brother, professional Hollywood videographer,
Kory with a story. How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another great spooktacular weekend.
Yeah, it is the weekend of spooks. All Hallows Eve approaches. Devil's Night is a thing. I don't know when this is gonna drop exactly, but all those things they happen around now, and that's why we're here with a themed episode for you all.
Today we're going to be talking about George A. Romero's three of his Living Dead movies. Talking about Night of the Living Dead, followed by the sequel, Dawn of the Dead, followed by the sequel, Day of, you guessed it, the Dead.
Okay, all right, it's easy there. But yeah, don't want to crank it up too much already. I don't think they can handle that.
It'd be too spooky for him.
Yes, or something like that. So we got a couple movies. This is our first triple episode, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think we briefly talked about Space Jam on a previous one as just a little side thing at the end, but
no, I don't think that does not count. That is not.
Yeah, this is our first full Monty triple.
Full Monsty. Yeah, so this is the infamous zombie trilogy directed by George A. Romero, and I wanted to talk about, I think makes the most sense to talk about him at first. So we are from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and George Romero is heavily affiliated with the area. A lot of people consider him a representative, and the original Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead specifically take place in the Pittsburgh area, both of which were shot in the Pittsburgh area. And it's super interesting. And watching these movies, particularly the first two, it was just like, wow, this is totally where I live. This is definitely where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And you can see it, in the landscapes and the roads, and then obviously with the mall, Monroeville Mall. I literally live 5 minutes from Monroeville Mall. It is super, super wild. It's super cool, and it's just neat to know that this much of cinema history has ties to the area, and the budgets of it's just between the budgets of the movies and the locations. It just makes you feel like you could make a movie. Anyone can make a movie. That's what this.
For sure.
That is what these make me feel like. It's not even just make a movie, but you can make a movie at a high level with nothing, or very little. Because I would not say nothing. There's a lot of people involved in all these, and you can see that it's like the people and the all the people that believe in the projects, like putting it together. You got this vibe in our John Waters episode with learning about how Pink Flamingos and his early films were made, and this kind of gives me a similar vibe. Baltimore and Pittsburgh too. The accents come out. There's a couple Pittsburgh accents, not so much in the first one, but I heard some in Dawn of the Dead that were really funny. So before we will start in order, obviously, with the night, then the dawn, and then the day. But is there any? So what kind of history do you have with the films and zombies and whatnot? And George.
So my one of my friends growing up lived across the street from us. We went on a huge horror kick when we were in like elementary and middle school. When we'd go to the local Hollywood Video, if you know what that is. Walk there, 45-minute walk each way, and then just binge whatever we could got and just watch it on repeat. And this was like one of those the first Night of the Living Dead where it was like, yeah, it was old, and as a kid, watching old movies isn't always the best, but it just like triggered the whole zombie craze for us, at least, and honest, and for everybody. And this is the first Night of the Living Dead is the blueprint essentially for how to make a proper zombie movie. And
horror, I would say indie horror blueprint, even more so.
Yeah.
Really think about I mean, I want to talk about that when we get to it, but this Night of the Living Dead in particular is a really indie horror blueprint that you can follow to this day. And I think and get it. I think people do in these some of these really low budget like not A24 like kind of films. They could easily. I think of a film like Green Room or even like Lamb. As much as it's more abstract, the scope and but the creep factor I think owes a lot to movies like this. And obviously there's Hitchcock and we're not experts in early horror or anything, but this makes me want to get deeper into it because of how well these films are made, but yet still showing like a rawness and I wouldn't say amateur, but maybe less polished. Yeah, raw I think is the best word to use because that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just not refined.
Yeah, and when with the especially with the Night of the Living Dead, I mean, made in what is it, 1968?
Yeah,
And still being in black and white and being all that they could really get to shoot on and whatever they could get to make it, really just goes to show that it's just how you use the tools. And less is more is a great rule for a lot of things. I mean, this movie takes place in essentially one location for the bulk of it, and it's all you need for to make. It's go out and shoot has never been more real if you think about it with all the how easy it is with cameras and equipment and everything now. And these guys were doing it back on film in the 60s.
Um. So. So he's from. So I guess he's associated with the Pittsburgh area because he went to CMU, Carnegie Mellon University, and he apparently after college did a lot of commercial work, and doing commercials and short films. I have here that one of his early commercial films was a segment for Mr. Rogers, and if you're not familiar with Mr. Rogers, he's another Pittsburgh legend. As well, and so apparently, coming out of that, they formed a production company and then go to work and doing Night of the Living Dead, and that was the first one, and it was a huge cult classic. One of the early midnight films, or I think that's what those called. Those like cult films that they play.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Well, I think in watching the John Waters stuff,
they talked about them a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, underground. Yeah, so it's like one of that. It's like that, and Pink Flamingos is a part of that. Probably for John Waters films are part of that for different reasons. But it's just it's so simple and so effective. And I guess that we can just jump right into the first one. Then from here, I don't really have much else to mention. Boy,
yeah, go for it.
So I watched this on HBO Max, and the remaster of this movie was fantastic. This looked like I was watching some HD homage, or like a Wes Anderson thing, or like or even like The Lighthouse. Where they try to purposely make it look old, but it's still HD and you can still see everything. It's black and white, but
yeah,
this remaster is fantastic. You can see everything so good. All the versions I saw, Dawn of the Dead, I saw HD version of that, and it was really good as well. But this, there's just maybe because the black and white and the texture really just lends itself well to how the movie looks. So the movie, how it looks is great. Like if they weren't wearing 60s clothes, and I might not be able to tell when the year was, other than if the black and white didn't matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really made this. And I'm probably not aware of it at the time, but they made it timeless and just kind of like the way the locations that are used are still, if living in the Pittsburgh area, that looks just like that. Nothing's changed.
I've seen cemeteries that look like that. A little house out in the sticks that look like that.
But the way that it was lit with the heavy contrast, I was gonna say the HBO Max remaster or whatever rescan they did for it.
It's probably not for HBO Max, but yeah, you know. What I mean.
Yeah, but it looks great, especially because of how contrasty this is. I feel like if you had a lower res or worse quality version, it would probably date it a little bit more. But you can still see everything in the shadows and everything is great, especially for when you're working on a shoestring budget. And it's just like when you're shooting black and white, it's very much you can throw light because there's no color that you have to worry about, or like daylight or tungsten or anything. So it's just just paint the light in there, and this just looks so good, especially once they get into the house where you have all the almost like pseudo noir look to it. Um,
Oh,
when you get
yeah, yeah.
especially when they have them like going up the step. The one that stuck out to me was whenever Barbara was walking up the steps when she was seeing the dead body on the ground for the first time, and you've just got these like shafts of light hitting the wall, but everything on the upstairs is just fallen to complete black. And then as
Yeah,
she's
it's like
like
the
walking up,
unknown
it's
of the
yeah.
upstairs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's super interesting choices aesthetically you can make with black and white that you do not have with color. In
Mm,
particular, so and I was reading about the production. So for blood, they would use for the blood scene in particular when there was blood dripping from the body upstairs. They used
mhm.
chocolate pudding
Yep.
because it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It
Yep.
all showed up the same on black and white, and that stuff like that is it's
Yeah.
honestly
They'll.
like the constraints. Then constraints breed creativity, and this is a thing
Mm,
that a lot of artists will say that there's for some reason. No, some that's why so much good art comes out of new, poor, independent artists sometimes is
mm,
because they're forced to make something great with the little tools that they have. It's really a punk ethos. You know, expressing yourself beyond your even your own capabilities, your own talents. Like you have a voice that transcends that, and I think that's super. That's what always appeals to me about more minimalist work. And in film, I think it's hard it can be hard to pull it off for a regular audience because you know a lot of people go to a movie to see spectacle, to see action, to see
mm.
you know something entertaining. So if you're too minimal, it is a boring movie, and I think that this is not a boring movie. This is a very engaging film. All three of these are very engaging. Um, and it's just amazing to me for how the age of it and the like all the subject matter in terms of you know the metaphors for race
Mhm.
in the first two movies they're just as relevant today as they've ever been and I don't know like if you really saw the like the staying power of all this, even beyond the zombies. But so many, and I'm going to pass it back to you. But so many of these choices, narrative choices, and character tropes, it's just like we're seeing how many tropes for the first time. And I'm
Mhm.
sure that other horror movies may have, like tangentially, probably establish some of this stuff, but it's like the putting it all together in this film that has created a new genre, created a classic mythical monster that's right up there with Dracula and Frankenstein and like
Mhm.
those are all from the 19th century. I don't know, something to chew on there. But well, yeah, what do you think about all that? The history of it and how it holds up, despite any of that.
As far as holding up like storytelling wise and all that, it is great. I mean, you've seen this same story told time and time again, but this is the original of it.
And it's
And
better.
yeah,
Like it wasn't like that. So I'm sorry, I'm jumping right back on, but I remembered something I wanted to say. Well, we've seen these things so many times, but it's not lame or boring. Sometimes I feel like when I've seen a trope established and I go back to the original thing and I'm like, well, I've seen this so many times, so it doesn't really have an impact on me. But this still has a weight. Sorry, back to you.
all good. But yeah, in the with the casting specifically, you bringing up like racial tones in the movie and the movies and such. This was a very big deal at the time for casting a black man as the lead role. Which at the time I remember we learned about this in my film studies class in college, and it was like I don't want to use the word groundbreaking because I don't know if there were films before it, but at least the way it was taught to us was that this was like a huge deal at the time because of the casting, because you hardly got to see it as often, especially in something as like low budget or whatever. It would be considered taking a risk, quote unquote.
I I,
Um,
I looked into it, and he was not the first African American lead in a movie, but he
Yeah, I
was,
figured that much.
but he is the first African American lead in a horror film. So and that is super significant. Can you consider that horror and sci-fi are one of the more uh, widely consumed genres? Dwayne Jones is the actor who plays Ben, the character Ben. Boy, it's a great performance.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he's the entire
he's
movie.
the best actor in the movie as well. And
Yeah,
not to belittle Barbara, she's just catatonic for half the film.
yeah.
Um, uh, that we'll get to in a second. But right alone, just the casting itself. But then with him in that role, it then changes the context of a lot of these scenarios. If Ben was white, arguing with this middle-aged white man who wants everyone to be in the base over control of the group, the power struggle of the group, it has completely different undertones when it's a black man, a young black man and a middle-aged white man. And he's trying to talk down to him and tell him what to do, and he's like, "No, I'm fucking in charge here." It's just completely different context with that casting. And I read that George Romero he casted him because he auditioned the best.
Yeah.
But so I don't think there's anything really written explicitly. I don't think there's any racial shits, like any racial slurs said. The other two movies have racial slurs.
This one does too. Towards the end of the movie, there's the N word in it. I think it's
Does
whenever
the bald
the
guy
cops and
say
stuff
it?
are. Yeah, I think it was either the bald guy or it was whenever the cops were.
It wasn't. I don't think the
police the
cops
ground.
said it. No, because I think that would have been on the nose, and I would have noted that.
Yeah, but
it must
they
have been
definitely
the
said it.
bald
'Cause
guy.
I have it written down. The use of racial slurs. And every single one of those have it, but it's always just the most asshole person in the movie is the one that's saying it. It's
Yeah,
not, you know,
they
what I mean?
usually
They
get
don't-
killed. They
Yeah.
usually die. Whoever says a slur dies in these films.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the opposite of the horror trope where if you have sex you die. This one you just have to be a racist and you die.
and this, like I said, this movie is raw. Some of the supporting actors are not great, and all the films. But this one is honestly the least camp of the three.
For sure.
Which is interesting that he got more, and I think it's probably a style of the 70s and 80s versus now, where maybe things are a bit more straight, with a horror film, but I think that's super interesting because I think that's what makes this one age so well is the lack of camp. Camp dates things. Like if it's if it's not associated to like a specific style, it doesn't it ties it to 80s and cheesy shit, and like I like camp, and camp movies are work, and I like all three of these movies, so it's not like but there's something about the gravity of when everyone's treating things playing things straight and how they actually would be versus acting like cartoon characters or something like that. Which I have explicit reason why I use that phrase for later. So yeah, what do you think about that? Like how the camp, the lack of camp, how it's played more straight, I think it makes it age.
Yeah, I 100%, and I think a lot of that camp is more a product of the 80s when you have like when you've got the Freddy Krueger movies and then the latter Jason or Friday the 13th movies, where there's
Halloween
like
was 1980, but there was no camp in that. I'm just trying to think of like how camp gets incorporated.
It's something that has come on throughout the 80s, I feel like, because then you have
70s too, though.
Well, I meant like if you go to the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, if you look at the earlier ones, Freddy Krueger is a lot less camp, but as he gets older, it just becomes more part of the genre.
But
and
I
feel
think
like
that's
just...
I get what you're saying, and that's definitely a thing. But I think with the Freddy Krueger films, it's like we've exhausted what makes these films good, so now we need to make them. We needed to make them more ridiculous schlock. It's like schlock, and I think the Jason films are like that. But Halloween 1 and 2, or Halloween is not like that, and then slowly becomes one as well because it's like the money, it's
Wasn't the first Halloween in the 70s?
It's like 1980 or 79 or 8. It's right around the turn of the decade. I just looked into it recently because of the new one. But
Evil Dies Tonight. 1978.
But yeah, I knew it was right around there. But but there's camp even in the Dawn of the Dead. So I don't think that like camp is in the 70s too. I think of like
Yeah.
isn't the early trauma films the late 70s? Those are as camp as
And
it
those
gets.
are super camp.
That's like all
all
camp.
because if you look at, and this is kind of an aside,
And
if you look at,
comedy is super camp in the 70s. Comedy is like all camp in the 70s.
yeah, it's like straight slapstick for a while there. But what I was gonna say was, if you look at like because this would have been what the Silver Age of comics, where everything got a lot more like more you couldn't have vampires and you couldn't do certain things, and everyone had to be like no one could die and all that stuff. And I wonder if it just became a product of just what became more censored and what became more popular, and then it became more of whatever, because horror movies in general, and tying into two, like in this area, this is when comics were also like dialing back when in the 70s with what they were doing and not doing with like the comic book code stuff. So I wonder if it was just like an era.
Silver Age is way before this. Silver Age is way before this.
I thought that was 60s, 70s.
Bronze Age is 70 to 84.
Oh, okay, never mind.
But no, you're right. And like I was going to bring this up as well, because these three films get increasingly gory, and the effects are better. That's part of it. But I think also it's because of attitudes towards gore and nudity. There's nudity in all of them. But I think the attitudes changed over time. Since the 60s and 50s and 40s, and it was like an erosion of some of that censorship. And by the time you get to the 80s, you can blow people's heads off and show their guts get ripped apart, and it's not a big deal. That's what I did think about these. But honestly, there's something about the subtlety. Obviously, the effects, I would love the effects of the later films in the first film, but this being like it's the restriction, it's the constraint of not being able to show people getting torn apart and whatever, and you have to like make it work.
I feel like things are always creepier in your imagination than they are in like reality when it comes to this stuff. So like,
and that's a tenet of horror. Like that's a Lovecraft tenet.
Yeah.
You're the unspeakable, the undescribable. It's so scary you can't even describe it. And that your imagination will always concoct something more scary. But I think what this original, it establishes a lot of the basic things: the survival. We're surviving. We're trying to hold up in this house. We're trying to hold up in a thing, in a place. The first one's just a small group of people, and that's all it is. It's just like, how do these people? They're trapped here. How do they make it through? Through. And then the latter ones, it's just the scope gets bigger, but it's really essentially the same thing. Of a small group of people surviving in a different scenario.
Yeah, I think the latter ones is more just creating like world building of how severe it actually is. Whereas in this first one, you're still unsure of how, is it just in this area? Is it something more widespread? And then when they finally get the TV and stuff, or they're in the radio where they're getting the updates of what's going on, they know it's more, they're not crazy or whatever. But this one ends. I kind of in a way that it's because the way the police show up, and I won't say the big thing.
Let's not skip right to the ending until we're ready to talk about the ending.
But I just meant like, it keeps it feeling small because of the handful of people. Walking around with rifles.
The news, there's a lot of exposition that's delivered through news, and it's honestly in all three of them, or at least it's not a thing in the third one, but in this one in Dawn of the Dead, for some reason the news stuff was the parts I was most interested in, because that's when you're getting all the world information, and that's when you're like, what is happening outside of this? I want to like you're tracking things breaking down. And how they're evolving, and at first the television or the radio, it's all hope. If they're going to tell us what to do, we're going to go to the right place, or we're going to get out of here. And in the first movie, that's what it is. It's just unfortunate the way things unfold. And this is it's a theme all the way through the third one, but it's the people kind of humans that are forced to survive together instead of cooperating. will go against each other and antagonize and kill until they're all dead and they all die. Until they're all dead and they fail. And a lot, you can talk about the later films, Day of the Dead in particular, like that is obvious. It's more about the humans. The humans are the monsters. But I think it's the thing in all of them.
I was gonna say that the whole the real antagonist is humanity itself, not the zombies. The zombies are just a catalyst to ignite humanity as the enemy.
And boy, do I see a parallel to something in the modern age that would
for sure
that would require humanity's cooperation to defeat something that's killing it. If there's if you that's the genius of these movies. And I'm sure someone else has thought of this idea maybe before 1968.
Oh yeah, this has been themes and everything is all the way back to like old ancient Greek writings and stuff. Man, and in the Bible, man is always its own worst enemy.
Can you give me an example of a story like where people can't cooperate to defeat a thing?
Well, not that specifically, but just
that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. I was saying more like if you like the things like Sodom and Gomorrah, where they just get smited for just being awful, and just people, even if they know what the right thing to do is, they always end up just shooting themselves in the foot, essentially.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of similar. I don't like that as a parallel because Sodom and Gomorrah is people like to associate with sex.
Just the first smiting thing I could think of.
Well, it's not a smiting thing. It hasn't have anything to do with God. Even though I think they bring up God in one of them, like this is or whatever. We'll get to that. But I think it's like more so that like it's nature. It's a force of nature. It's something that's happening. It's a disease. I think the disease parallel is the easiest one to see. That if if all you have to do is get vaccinated and wear a mask. Oh, they're even talking about working on vaccines and some of these things. And it's like, all you got to do is do this and it'll go away. And, everybody doubts it and nobody listens. And eventually humanity is torn apart and is eradicated because they wouldn't listen to scientists or science. And I'm getting off track because that's not as much of a thing in the first movie. But it sows those seeds with the ending of the original film, and I think we can talk about before we talk about the ending. There was a couple things I noticed. Other than the cast, some of the supporting cast, there was a female character, not Barbara. The girlfriend,
guy's wife.
The girlfriend. No, not Helen. Not Helen.
Gotcha.
What is her name? What is the younger guy's name?
Honestly, don't remember.
We should have these wikis up already, so we don't have to look things up.
There's Tom
and Judy. Tom and Judy. Judy was not good. Her character. Well, here's my biggest gripe of the whole trilogy: female characters are written terribly. That's one of the biggest gripes with it all. Barbara is catatonic. She gets punched in the face by our hero Ben.
I had it written down. The 60s when medicine was distributed by fist.
Punches her in the face because she's hysterical. And she doesn't talk she's just crazy. The women are irrational and crazy in the first movie. They're just so hysterical they can't handle the apocalypse. Helen is the one who's the most with it, but she is convincing herself that her daughter is not a zombie, and that which Ben is totally. He's like asking the questions, but he doesn't care about them, so he's just like, you know what, fuck it, like do whatever you want down there. I'm not getting involved. They had all kinds of supplies down there. They had weapons down there, but they just weren't getting used because Ben was just like, I'm not dealing with it. You guys can just control the basement.
Yeah, her essential thing the whole movie was just dunking on her husband, rightfully so, because he was being an ass the whole movie. And then just getting him riled up, and then it's just her husband and Ben going at it the entire time. But I was gonna say what really struck me as the first like, oh, this is horror movie logic, and was when Judy runs out of the house to just say, I'm going too, and run into the truck.
That's what didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense and got them all killed.
And then, yeah, just light the fire. The dude pulls the gas out, goes to fill up the truck, immediately lights on fire. There he hears a line from Ben off screen. It's just, "Oh, don't hold it by the torch," and then immediately ignites. And then they all stay in the car and blow up with it.
That is not one of the best parts of the movie. Harry is the name of the bald guy. Also, the husband's name's Harry and Helen. Harry, Helen, Tom, Judy, Ben, and Barbara. And
cast.
Yeah, and there was a really horrible cut in the basement. It was with Helen and Harry are talking, and it's just like they're in the middle of talking, and then there's this really awkward cut, and it's like, right, you didn't see this?
I don't think I really. When it comes to these old movie stuff like that, like it doesn't really bother me too much. Like there's a part where Barbara's on the phone and there's just zero sound from her, but she's looking like she's talking and weeping, and all you hear is just like the rotary sounds. And I just took it as like, oh, it must have just been like a mistake or an editing thing.
No, but like it was bad. Like it was like there was like a pause and they were talking, and then there was this weird pause, and then it cut to the same the same shot, but it was a cut, and then they were slightly moved.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about, but yeah, I mean that's a budget of its time. Like, so I feel like I can't knock it too much, but yeah, definitely things
it's
like
a
that
bad edit. I mean, they must have literally had nothing else they could have did. Like that's
for sure.
That's what I'm saying. There's just stuff like that like honestly that was the only moment in the movie where I was like, okay, this is this is a independent, almost student film. It does have that. Like that was the only moment where I was like, okay, I get it. This is what it is. But other than that, it feels like I don't even notice that it's low budget, really. I mean, the makeup, but it's so old, I wouldn't even notice that.
No. I mean, just the story taking place in one place, but you'd have to be a film person to really recognize that is a product of low budget.
There's plenty of movies today that are at one place but still cost millions of dollars. I mean, no inflation, but it's like beyond. I don't know. Like there seems like there's a lot of community. Like the Pittsburgh area seemed to really want to help them do this. The news people involved were actual Pittsburgh area TV people.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Billy Cardile apparently was a Channel 11 news reporter and played himself on for the news reports.
Wow, that's super dope. What I was gonna say was about the and this is kind of the first step of kind of I want to talk about George A. Romero's style of shooting these is and I think it's very great, but I think it's part of the detriment of the second film is just how he handles pacing and time with the action sequences. Because I feel like it not holds, meaning like one take held a while, but you go through every little intricate thing. He lets them wrestle for a very long time. And this movie being only 90 minutes, you don't really notice it.
It doesn't matter in this one.
Yeah, but you just see it. This is where it starts on how he shoots his action and how he shoots his.
Well, we're gonna talk about how he shoots in Dawn of the Dead because that's the best place to talk about his style. Because it is the most indulgent of the three in terms of how it is shot. Not in like lighting or budget, but in terms of how apparently. All right, we'll get to it. But let's talk about the ending. And the end. So, like I said, the newsreels are so fucking cool. They're cool the whole time. And there's a sequence where we find out that the police have put some posses together of local people with guns, and they're just walking around shooting. And they bring that back in the next one, but it seems like they have it under control, and it's just like it's only a matter of time before they make it through to your area and whatever. So by the end of the film, everyone dies. Except for Ben. Honestly, don't
He
even
ended up
yeah,
escaping to the
yeah,
basement.
because Barbara went crazy and walked into the zombies, and Helen got eaten by her daughter. Harry got killed by Ben. Or no,
Oh,
Harry didn't get
no,
killed by Ben.
Harry got killed by the zombies as well. So
Yes, yes.
Barbara's brother, as a zombie, made it broken through the window in the house, and that's what made her go, "Oh, it's
No, I know, and
John."
he walked out, and she
And
walked out. That's what I was just saying.
yeah. Well, she like grabbed her and pulled him out.
Yeah, she
And then,
yeah. But
but
Harry
not like
went down to the
willingly.
basement, and that's where he died. He died in the basement. He didn't die
The
upstairs.
oh, okay, yeah. Because
Yes.
well, no, because I'm thinking he took the gun and then he was gonna shoot Ben.
Ben
Whenever all the
shot him, and
zombies
he
started
fell down
doing
the
it,
stairs.
Yes, okay, that was it. I was trying to remember where he landed.
All right.
But everybody else just gets dragged out through the windows and stuff, and then
So
Ben
yeah,
ends up in the
everybody's
basement.
dead. Everybody's dead. Okay. And Ben is the only one alive, and he hears gunshots and dogs barking upstairs, and so he heads upstairs. But he's very quiet, and he's trying not to reveal himself. But apparently, the posse sees him inside the house, and one of them shoots him before Ben can signify that he is a human being. And it speaks not. I mean, it's an awesome ending. Period. A fucking great ending. But not only is it interesting, even if just for any character being shot at the end of the film, but because he's a black man, being shot by white police posse, like there is way more going on to that. It's like they barely even checked. They didn't even know. They just saw, a man in the window and they shot him. Without looking into it or anything. And then like the stills afterwards, right before the credits, where they have meat hooks and they're pulling, and you just see him like go to pull his body out, and it's rough. And there's definitely some things going on there. Speaking to the black experience, I personally read out of all that, and I think it would be less. I think he doubles down on a lot of that stuff in the second one. So I really think that's what it's going for. What did you think about the ending?
I honestly, it's great because it's one of those like it's back then especially this is not done as much. It was one of those just you've invested your entire movie into caring about this guy. He's the one you made it through with him as an audience member. It's like you and him. And then only to just be cut down by the one thing that's supposed to help him. And it's not, and the fact that it's not even a zombie or anything, but it is people. It just goes, I feel like that just plays on so many levels of what it's trying to say. But also at the same time, it's I don't want to put it. It's just like because it's like shocking, but it's not at the same. Like I expect everyone to die in these kind of movies, and they did, but it's just like shocking in the way that it does happen.
Yeah,
And
he wasn't.
really
It wasn't
like,
a monster that killed him. It was ultimately
Yeah.
a human. It was ultimately humans, and that was definitely part of the themes for sure. I think I like I said, I think a lot of these themes still work, but putting a black man in the lead just amplifies the power, I think, of them.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's a super ahead of its time, for sure. All right, well, I think that's everything I want to say about Night of the Living Dead. Do you have anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think we pretty much covered all the important stuff.
Well, what are you scoring it?
I'm gonna give this one a 4 because it is solidly an awesome movie. It has its flaws and everything, but for pioneering the zombie subgenre of horror and just kind of pioneering into horror as in itself, I think a 4 is definitely.
I don't know. I could honestly, it's almost perfect. But like we talked about the rawness and the production and some elements. I think it just bumps it down to I mean, I guess it's the smallness of it that I guess I've been struggling between 4 and 4.5, and I think it's honestly the best of the three, in terms of a film. In terms of a film, not, and I think you can argue for the second one, but I think in terms of a film, especially because it's nice, 90 minutes. It's just a really easy watch. I think I want to give it a 4.5. I don't know. I feel like I could change it to a 4. But I'm gonna give it a 4.5.
I think either one of those is definitely it's worthy of any of them, 4 and above.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And all right, let's move on. We've had our night. We've stuck it out through the night, but now the dawn comes. What did you think about Dawn of the Dead? Now, before I actually throw you that question, let's touch base on a couple facts. This film was released in 1978, originally in Italy. Did not release in the United States until 1979.
Oh.
So you may be wondering, why did Mr. Romero wait a decade to make the follow-up? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know.
I'm going to tell you. So apparently he wanted to not do any further horror movies because he did not want to be typecast, or as many people try to avoid in their careers. And apparently Dario Argento reached out to him and about financing a film and wanting them to do a horror film. And so Dario Argento, who's also a legendary film director who I hope to do on this podcast someday, I think he's known for Suspiria, isn't he?
I don't know.
Oh,
I've never seen Suspiria.
You should know that. But yeah, so Italians involved. The score was originally done by Goblin, a synth band from a Prague synth band that was heavily involved in the Suspiria soundtrack. And yes, Dario is the director of Suspiria, which you need to see then, now that you've declared it for the world.
I'm making it up. There's a lot of stuff I haven't seen yet.
So this is still an independent film. He did Hollywood films, George Romero, after Night of the Living Dead, but none of them really were huge successes. And then this was an indie financed thing, and the budget of this was also very small. The budget of the original was $117,000. You want to know what the budget for Dawn was?
I'm gonna say 500,000.
$640,000.
Jesus, I thought this was at least $1 million because
there's a lot of shit in it. There's a ton of
huge
shit.
In the production scale versus
this movie is much more grand in production than the third movie, which is millions of dollars. So I looked into this as well. In the mall itself, George knows the guy who's one of the people involved with putting the mall together, and Mark Mason of Oxford Development Company back in 1974, who was an acquaintance from his alma mater, Carnegie Mellon University.
Oh.
And it's just interesting. Pittsburgh really loves it when Pittsburgh is doing something big. And
for sure.
Pittsburgh will sometimes be willing to help for fame, and they will break down some of those cost barriers. And I think that's what we have. That's what we have here. And I think that's super interesting, and why the mall is ultimately the focal point of the film. Apparently, they had to film this during off hours of the mall. So, when the mall was closed, they'd film all night until the 7 a.m. automatic music that would come on in the morning. So then after, they'd film, and then they have to put everything back the way that it was. Wow. And apparently they had, through Christmas, they were debating on we'll have to we have to take down all the Christmas stuff and put it up every day or every night. Mm-hmm. And they decided not to do that, and they just took a break on filming. Super interesting. The production of this film is fascinating. This is film in general. The Mall, as much as it's been, 50 years since this movie, right? 40 years. the mall has some elements that are exactly the same. From the outside, it does look the same. There was a shot of the one plaza where the Guitar Center and Mr. Nice Guys, the card shop, is.
Yeah,
And I saw it, I was like, holy shit, that's the Guitar Center. And
yeah, seeing that entrance to the Monroeville Mall from that road in the film a couple times is definitely like, all right, like that in the parking lot in general. Just any shot of the parking lot, you feel like you've just, I parked there. Oh,
I literally know this. And I mean, even when they're flying over all like they kept calling it around Johnstown, but it honestly looked like anywhere from in the boons, like not in the towns around here.
I love that they refer to the people of Johnstown as Hicks. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, well, if you're from Philadelphia, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess we can go into the movie. I just wanted to give a quick production facts, but the beginning of this film is my favorite part of the movie. It's a little rough. It's honestly one of the more rough parts of the movie, but it's so interesting to see how society's progressing, and like we get it from the news, and then we get it from the police, and then we kind of move on from there, and then we're getting the helicopter observing the people in the sticks, quote unquote, and it's super fascinating to watch society breaking down. Like I said, in the last movie, the news things were some of my favorite, and the news things in this one made me like uncomfortable. The whole beginning sequence made me on edge. Like I was anxious through the beginning, just thinking about society turning on each other, and you know, every man and woman for themselves, and just see that it's very. I feel like there's very few zombie movies or post-apocalyptic movies that really dwell on the transition from normal to apocalypse. Like, you know, like they might do it briefly and you see a bunch of running and it's some frantic action escape scenes and then things calm down, but we kind of saw it slowly happening, and I just thought that was so interesting. Like I could watch a whole movie of this.
Yeah, the whole opening of this movie perfectly captures like the chaos that would ensue as like things were slowly breaking down. Because you've got like it's like a talk show type of thing. It seems like, and then you've got a doctor on there who's essentially telling these are the things we need to do if we want to survive.
And everyone's freaking out. Like they don't want to listen.
All the crew of the like working in there are just not giving a fuck about their job and just screaming at this guy. And then you've got our characters. She shuts off
Fran.
Fran, who looks like Dee from It's Always Sunny, to me at least. Then you have her just shutting down the feed, and then her man is just like, there's a chopper on the roof, and everybody's just seems to be like, all right, it's fucking, everyone's gonna run, but no one really has a plan. And the sense of chaos is just so well. There's just nonstop people talking over each other for the first like 15 minutes of the movie, and I love it. It really just, you feel the scale since the first one right from the get-go, you know. And that's when a lot of it, when you start feeling that style. Like this is definitely a very long movie, but man, does it have, I know you and I like to talk about style, but this has style to me that I really like. There's a lot of different things in this that I really like, and the way it was shot, and it was cut and stuff. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, so George Romero is not what anyone would call a fancy film director. You know, there's not gonna be complex camera work or lighting or any of that really. The lighting in this film's all fluorescent, like heavily lit stuff. Like it's pretty simple camera work, but what his style is with this film in particular is very improvisational. And I saw some things that were referencing, like in the 70s there were so many filmmakers and all they would do is just shoot as much as possible, and then they go to the editing room and they edit a film out of that. And that's apparently what George Romero's style is that he would just shoot a million directions, like a million angles of the same thing, and just get a ton of film, footage, and then edit that down into a more coherent narrative. So I think that's what you're seeing with particularly once the bikers come in to the film, you really see that all the action with the bikers, it's all cut, it's all from a bunch of different angles. It's like it's not that it's not cohesive, it just it feels chaotic, and it has a different film feel than like a scripted, choreographed, shot action sequence, from specific plan. Everything's planned to be that way. It reminded me of Pink Flamingos.
Yeah, definitely. I mean that just because the biker stuff is so chaotic, and I feel the way having that shooting style definitely sells that chaos for me. And what I was gonna say was the big part of the style which I like on this, and while it's a little more gratuitous on this movie specifically, is the pacing of this being how he makes things longer and such. It definitely feels like a real passage of time. It feels real time, even though it's not, obviously. Like the whole sequence from the TV station in the beginning up to the helicopter, like flying over Johnstown, it felt to me just like it had obviously didn't take this long. There were time skips, but it just felt like this all was happening in real time, and you were just with them on the edge of just like, where are they going, what's going to happen, and everything. And then when things slow down, he lets it slow down, but he also keeps, there's a lot of b-roll and a lot of just side things happening in the slowdown in like the second act of this movie, but it also adds to the monotony of just kind of being trapped in one spot and not being able to really do much, and then also just trying to find time. Like, I love the scene where Fran and Flyboy, Stephen Andrews, they have like their own little bedroom with a little lamp and books that are bookmarked and everything, and it's just kind of like,
and it looks like a hotel room, or it looked like a bedroom.
Yeah.
By the end of the film, their little hideout is fully furnished and it looks like an apartment.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the intro, because I always associate with this mall being the majority of the film, and it is the majority of the film, but they don't get there until about a half hour in.
Because it's a long movie.
The first 15 minutes is all the TV station and the police sequence, and then you have honestly that's probably the first 20 minutes, and then the next 10 is the flying, and then they have I guess actually it might even be longer than that, because then they have the scene at the private airfield where they all get attacked.
But the scene introducing the cops breaking into that what seems like an apartment building, and you have Sergeant and Sergeant Racism just shooting everyone.
So that's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I was just getting to. So in the very beginning, you hear some stuff on the TV of they are martial law. People are no longer allowed to live in private homes, and you have to give all of your dead over to the National Guard so that they can be dealt with. And so I was having a hard time. I never understood what was going on with the police part. I was like, are they just showing us like police trying to fight the zombies before things fully break down? But this time it's like, no, they're not there to kill zombies. They're there to kill people. And they make it clear that the project is predominantly inhabited by people of color. And boy, is there a really egregious person with brown face in the very beginning. Martinez, they're like, Martinez, you come out here, and it's just a white guy with brown face with a terrible wig. It's bad. And so then they go and storm the building, and they're like getting people out of the apartment. But then there's apparently an officer named Wooly, and he just has a shotgun and a revolver, and he's just breaking down doors and blowing people's heads off. And he establishes that he's racist beforehand. It's just like, whoa, like, what is this guy doing? And they kill him and everything. And it's just, I guess, supposed to illustrate that the cops are starting to lose it, and some of them are getting crazy and killing people. One of the I wanted to ask you, there was the cop who killed himself in the beginning for no reason. He did not get bit. He just wrestled with a zombie, killed the zombie, laid there on the floor, and just like, you know what? I'm killing myself.
Oh, I didn't think he killed the zombie. I thought that it was still crawling at him.
No, there was a shot at him blowing the zombie's head off. He like because there was Roger, one of our characters, a black police officer and a white police officer in a backwards hat. And the backwards hat one had the shotgun and he kept trying to cock it and it wasn't shooting. And then then he got knocked over. And well, he pulled out a revolver and blew that zombie's head off and he didn't get bit. So I was just like, why did he kill himself? It's bothering me to this moment. Why did he kill himself? I Googled about it and everything.
Because the plot, I guess.
Well, I don't know. There's a moment later, and I guess George Romero was asked about why he did a couple things in the mall, and he just like, because we could. So there might be a little bit of that in this movie. But man, watching the police, like the chaos of the police, and then they started getting overrun by zombies, and for some reason nobody seemed to, like, after all the zombies took out a shitload of cops and National Guard, the cops are still just like slowly removing zombies and stuff. It's just like a really weird vibe, and I don't understand what's going on. Like I do, but it's like the chaos and then our Peter and Roger just have a casual conversation like, you want to get out of here? And he's like, yeah, and then they just leave.
Yeah,
like,
they the guy from the National Guard just like checks in on him from a different
good?
door. He's like, everything all right in here? And he just sees like 20 dead bodies on the ground. It's just like, holy shit. Well, all right then, and then leaves.
I just and maybe this is just like the beginnings of what is much more elaborated on in the third film about the breaking down of like people doing their jobs, soldiers, police, scientists, whatever have you. In a crisis, these are emergency personnel, and if they aren't willing to do their jobs, then we literally have nothing. There's nothing holding us back from the madness. But one quick thing before we move on to the mall part. But in the TV studio, did you notice that they had what's going on, Kory?
My phone just randomly just started playing noise. That was weird. I keep it on silent over there. Anyways, sorry.
I don't remember. What was I saying?
You said there's something specifically in the beginning before they got to the mall that you wanted to bring up.
Okay. All right. Well, let me find a natural place to start this. Okay, so there was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and just about the intro. I know we've been staying on a long time, but I think it is my favorite part of the movie. The TV station, the cameras all have pieces of paper taped to them with the TV station's name, and the TV station is stenciled. It's not even printed. It is stenciled on to, it says WGON TV, and just like, was that really necessary? Because it is immersion. It is more immersion breaking to have the pieces of paper, fucking Scotch taped to the cameras than it would be to just shoot with the cameras.
I wonder if it was a licensing thing where they had to cover up the logos of the branding of the camera, and then that was just a quick fix on the day.
Well, I get like local news has those little boxes they put around, like especially in the day, that they put with the logos around everything and whatever. But yeah, it was just a funny little thing. Didn't bother me, but
I wouldn't be surprised if it was just like a last minute somebody brought it up and it was, oh shit, all right, well, we're already all here and we can't push this, so let's just do it, tape it, put a piece of paper over it. Quick fix.
But and like the whole flying over sequence, it's established that a lot of the people in the sticks are kind of, it showed a lot of those posses from the first movie, and they were like gathering together to kill zombies and whatever. But it seemed to be going well for them, and it's just like they seem to focus on the population centers. That cities were fucked. But the further away you got away from cities, the better it was. They ended up being in Monroeville, which is it's not I would consider probably a suburb, but it is a much more populated suburb versus what you might think of as a suburb. Just because there's a lot of shopping. It's a big shopping district.
Yeah. I imagine even back then in the 70s too, it would have been pretty decently populated.
It was a brand new mall. It's a brand new
Yeah.
mall.
The
They had to put it there for a reason.
about the Johnstown hunters, I thought it was interesting little detail, and I don't know if it was intended to or not, but every single one of the hunters has their hunter's license on them, like either on their hat or on their vest
Oh
or on their
yeah,
jacket.
they were wearing orange and stuff. I noticed that
So
too.
I wonder if it was like if you have a license to hunt, that means you're like good enough with a weapon, so come on out.
Yeah, yeah, that was probably maybe the criteria for having people come out. Because if you just let everyone with a gun come out, you could get people accidentally killing each other.
No, for sure. But I thought it was a cool detail. But yeah, then after that we just go into the mall, which is, man, do they do a lot, spend a lot of time of just shots of the parking lot before the helicopter lands.
Well, it's like they're just showing all the like all the people like walking through
Yeah.
the parking lots and just like the big emptiness of it. Yeah, the mall. It's pretty wild seeing the mall just because we know the mall, but once they get in, and it's pretty crazy seeing that. But the mall itself and just like how it's used, it's like the way they talk about how like, oh, they this place was special to people, and they came back here after they died. Like, it's totally a commentary on capitalism and and how like we're zombies to consume and buy and purchase things. And the mall was an important place to us during our lives as a place where we could spend, as just a place to just spend money.
Yeah, so it's like consuming in the living is with money, and then consuming beyond is just flesh.
And even the intro with the projects, those police were trying to evacuate people from that building against their wills. Essentially, gentrification. That's what it is. Is people being people from predominantly maybe as I say African American communities, lower class communities that are forced out by police or by construction or what have you. And there was definitely a parallel with that for sure. And then even with the like the people's customs, and like the dead, they still respect their dead and stuff like that. It's just real interesting to think about. Like, oh, why aren't these people just listening? Why aren't they just following and doing what they're supposed to do? And there's like some compassion for that perspective as well. I thought it was super interesting. It's like, as much as raw these movies are, and at their base, gore and murder, there's just so much political and social commentary in all three of them.
Yeah, I feel like George Romero is very good at subtext. Without things being, at least from these three movies, just nothing is deliberately in your face with anything. I felt it's more just seems to be just like, if you picked up on it, you got it, and if not, it's not breaking, it's not too on the nose or anything. It doesn't take away from the film in any way.
I think the third one's the most on the nose of the three, with its themes. Not necessarily whatever. It's got its own thing going, but this one, with the capitalism and the opening sequence, like I said, at the projects. There's just a lot that's interesting. Oh, and even the biker gang, you got to remember, in the 70s, the Hells Angels were considered a fucking like a serious gang. Like, they were a national gang that people considered, like, they were afraid of in the consciousness. And so using them here is definitely like some kind of social commentary, I think, as well. That they survive, past the police, past the government, whatever. It's almost like a nomadic tribe. Instead of on horses, they're on motorcycles.
Hogs.
And there was a lot of them. Too.
Yeah. He made the one guy, what's his name? Peter. He says there's like 15 to 20 of them out there, and then when they get inside the mall, there's like 50. There's a whole caravan of motherfuckers that come in. But getting to the mall, what I wanted to talk about is I wanted to ask you, how did you feel about the pacing once it gets to the mall? Because for me, once they're in the mall until the bikers come, it kind of slowly, the longer we're there, the more I kind of feel like I'm dragging and just kind of feel
I didn't think
like
it dragged at all.
oh, I felt like they just spent too much time just uh just doing the stuff in between the mall where they're just like, all right, we're gonna, because it starts off with Peter and Roger going into go get supplies or ransack the place for money or whatever Roger brings up. But I feel like that scene just took a long time and then just blended in with it was hard to keep track of how much time was actually passing at that point when it got to how many times they went in and out of
I don't
going from
know.
the
Yeah, you keep talking about time passing, but like, I don't think it matters. Like days and weeks pass in the movie.
so it's this it's you got to give the audience like a sense of just without knowing a sense of time, it's hard for the audience to gauge like how much of a struggle is happening or how much
I mean,
empathy or whatever they're
there's
feeling at that
multiple
point.
scenes where they're eating and changing clothes, and yeah, there's multiple projects that take over days. Like, definitely, it seems to be like days pass. It's night and day. Like, there's day and night cycles
Oh
throughout the
no,
movie.
for sure. But what I'm just saying about in the middle mall part, I just feel like it drags on a little too long with that kind of because in combination of you're not knowing of like really because of how much time is actually elapsing, it just kind of feels like a long thing that's just happening over the course of like a couple nights. Obviously you got cool things where like they're building up the wall to kind of
Well,
like
they
the hidden
decide
door
that they're
thing.
gonna be there. They decided they're gonna be there long term. Like, they established
Yeah.
that they're gonna be there long term. So that's why they're doing all these projects. Like, that's
No,
what
I
it
get it.
is for the middle of the film, is them trying to make the place fully secure with, they're putting the trucks in front of the things, and then they have to
Yeah, for
kill all
sure.
the zombies inside of the place, and then after they do that, they get to finally enjoy them all. So we have the sequences of them using the different stores and the haircut, and they have a dinner and everything, and
No, yeah.
like, it
But
progresses. And then obviously Roger is dying halfway through because he gets bit during the trucks thing. Like, I just, like, without knowing that there's the biker, because I kept waiting for the biker part, but without knowing that, I feel like the movie could have even ended earlier. It's just the biker thing then added on another half hour to the end of the movie.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say, because like the being a 2 hour and 20 minute movie, it just this is where
you
it
watched
felt long.
that's
Like,
not the right cut. The original cut is 2 hours and 7 minutes. Did you watch
oh,
the extended?
that's the one I found. It just said Dawn of the Dead. I didn't say anything about extended, but it was 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's not the real cut.
Oh, that makes sense of why the middle act felt super long for me.
Yeah, that sucks.
Um,
So, as far as the score, the original score, Dario Argento wanted Goblin to do the whole score, but apparently Romero only uses them sparingly. Much of his cut favors stock cues, just from library stuff. Like, but honestly, it didn't bother me with the mall music. But in the very end of the film, and I'm not gonna spoil the end just yet, but their heroic music starts playing, and it is so bad and just so fucking bad. Like, he's trying to fight his way out and get to the chopper, and it's just the worst music playing, and I'm just like, no. And like, knowing that I know how it came to be, it's like, why didn't he go with the Goblin soundtrack? Goblin is fire, and it's one of the best things about Argento movies. It's just interesting.
there's a lot of music things in this one and the next one that I like. I score I do this one, the mall music kind of, which I imagine it's supposed to be get on your nerves a little bit because that's what the characters
It's
are
supposed to be
hearing
grating,
24/7.
yeah.
But outside of that, I very much like the noises and such for the instruments that are used with it, especially on the next one, which has the sample that's in the Gorillaz song. I was gonna ask. So, how did you feel about when Roger in the trucks, when they're moving all the trucks to block the entrances, and I had written down Roger's wild acting. Because he just starts, he's just on one from the time he gets the blood sprayed on him, and then he's like secretly bitten.
It's been
Uh,
it wasn't secretly bitten. It was everyone knew he was bit. And he started. It was already established a little earlier. It's like every time that they would interact with the zombies, he was getting like more and more. He was really confident in the beginning. If you remember when
mm,
Steven is trying to shoot at a zombie, and he like smacks his gun out of the way multiple times, and then one shots them. And then once they get into the mall, they have the multiple, like the long sequence that you were referring to earlier about when they first get the supplies and establish secure the hideout and all that.
mm.
And so like he was like increasingly getting more and more confident, and then he's like whooping and hollering, and then by that point it's like the first truck thing was successful, and he was like acting more reckless, and then he almost dies, and he just gets all like adrenalined up and starts acting even more reckless, and then it's to the point where Peter has to be like, yo, chill the fuck out or you're gonna get somebody killed, and then it happens anyways. um so like I agree that it probably could have been handled a little bit with a little more nuance or a little more a bit more gradual. But I didn't have an issue with it. I thought it made sense considering the situation that they're all in. And he's
Uh,
just getting more and more like the adrenaline and the
mm.
recklessness and the confidence from succeeding at murdering so many of these things.
Yeah, yeah. I just felt like it was a little sprinkling in of the camp, for just like the over the topness when he first gets in there and he's yelling about how he forgot his bag and stuff, and
I didn't
then
think
like,
it was
Peter has to just
campy. I
stop
think
him.
he was just.
Um,
I don't think he was campy. I think he's just like emotional and fired up to like to do this because it's like a life threatening thing. And
yeah, it just read a little over the top for me, as far as the performance went, but I do enjoy that whole sequence though, whether it's all like the coordination and everything, and trying to get the trucks and everything up, and then you've got what Fran on the roof and everything, is really cool. Just there's so many cool things that happen in this movie, um, in order that are just I just feel like they have these a good like peaks and valleys that can happen out of it, once they get like their whole thing established before it like kind of settles down and they make their like apartment hideout and stuff, until the bikers come in. But the bikers, uh
I don't know. What do you mean
the,
peaks and valleys? What you gotta elaborate there.
oh, just kind of like there's a lot of things going on, and then there's it's quiet and there's not a lot, and there's a lot of things, and those happen kind of fairly quickly until I feel like once they're locked down, and then things kind of like somber out for a little bit.
There's like
um
events. There's like we have to
yeah.
do this, then we have to do this, then we have to do this, and then we finally get to relax. And when they finally get to relax is when the
The bikers
bikers
show
come.
up. Yeah. Um, the how do you feel like that was handled with the bikers? I felt like that was because I like I get
If
why they wanted to hide and everything, from the bikers, and just kind of like we'll just wait for them to go, and Stephen Flyboy Andrews fucks that up. Um, but I just feel like
so so where we are basically is they take control of the mall, and then they start like kind of enjoying themselves and finally having the mall taken over, like all the stuff they can go on dates and whatnot. um and then we have a scene where they acknowledge that the government emergency broadcasts have stopped. And the last one we get is like really weird. Um, and it's just like this expert guy who they've been referring to this whole time, and now it's devolved to like how it was in the beginning, where everyone's just kind of arguing with him, and he's trying to tell everyone to be logical, and
Mhm.
they're not listening. And then that kind of reminds everybody that there's like no hope, and they were kind of been having it's been more positive lately. But ultimately, this is it. This is what we got. And that is when the bikers show. So the bikers find out about the place because they see the helicopter landing when Steven trains Fran on how to fly it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what do you think about what do you think of the bikers? Because I feel like that's when the movie takes a turn.
Uh, the biker situation was kind of interesting because like you're kind of led on in the beginning because you only see like a small truck full of people all gathered around a radio. And I like that it's like not a scene later you see how many people are there, but I like that it's like because they're trying to con the other people and it's saying there's only three of them. And then even at the viewer, you think it's only like five or six of them, and then you pull back and it's like 50 in a whole convoy rolling up.
Well, there's like yeah,
Um,
he said there's like 20 with like 20 bikes, and then when there's like sidecars and multiple
mm,
people and bikes and etc. Yeah, so then they it doesn't take very long for them to move the trucks and break in to the mall. And there's a lot of scenes of them driving motorcycles, and I think at some point we see them driving a car inside the mall, like our
mm.
people, the heroes. It's just crazy to see them whipping around inside the mall, and that's all like that's how it was like. They didn't have any, accidents or fuck up the mall or anything.
Yeah, it's super nuts, especially because like it's like, oh man, that dude's doing donuts right where the hot topic is there now. It's just like wild to see that stuff. But I love the chaos of this whole scene. Like from the start of it, as soon as they are introduced, it's very reminiscent of the beginning of the movie's chaos in the newsroom, to me at least. Where you have like it's just nonstop just cuts of just different shit happening and none of it is in like order or anything. It's just random things of what they're doing inside the mall, just breaking shit, shooting stuff, just like probably what most people would do in like in a when society has collapsed and you're just in a group pillaging for supplies everywhere. Probably to them it's like a breath of fresh air, but the it is I can't help but feel though if the main characters would have just stayed hidden from the get-go, they would have passed and the you wouldn't end up into this huge firefight towards the end of the movie with them, but at least like the bikers get the just desserts when the zombies start pulling in.
So that's when the movie gets the camp really turns up, I would say. So yeah,
Mhm.
they're pulling out pies and they're smashing that. I think that's what the movie gets known for, is everybody remembers the pie, the people throwing
Yeah.
pies in the face of the zombies.
Mhm.
I think it's probably the most iconic part of one of the most iconic parts of the movie. And they're just like so a bunch of gags, and like it's like it's comedic, but then it kind of devolves into a shootout between the heroes and the bikers, because Steven just can't handle them taking our turf or whatever, and like
Mhm.
Peter's just like, just let them do their thing. They're gonna loot, they're gonna take some stuff, they're gonna hide, they won't know where we are, and that'll be that. Like as long as they don't stay here, which
Mhm.
they seem to be nomadic, like they're all, they're riding around on bikes. So that was, I think, if they would have done that, I think they would have been fine.
Mhm.
But how did you feel? I wanted to ask about how do you feel about the way all that part was shot, though, because that's what I would consider the most emblematic of the improvisational style, just shooting a shitload of angles and stuff and just cutting it into
Mhm.
something afterwards. Like that's what that definitely seems like.
Oh, for sure. Like I was just about to say, when you brought up earlier in the movie, we were talking about the his style of just shoot it and make a story in post, and this is that as I was saying earlier, there's none of the shots go together, but it's all just in the same location. It's just random, but it's chaos, and you between the cuts and the and how much loud noises are going on, and there's all this yelling and motorcycle revving and guns and everything. It's just but I feel like it conveys like properly. Like if I was Peter or Steven or just hiding, watching, just like how much tension there would be, especially with all the sound design and everything happening. Um, but I think it works. I definitely think it works for this scene, even with the little sprinkles of the camp. But the when the zombies start coming in full force, though, and it just kind of devolves into like a 10 minutes of people just getting eaten and ripped apart and letting the special effects really fly. I was reading that a lot of the special effects stuff too was just kind of like it was the guy who did the special effects was like, hey, I can do this. And then the George Romero was like, all right, well then we'll make this scene around it so we can set up this special effect.
Yeah,
And
yeah. When Tom Savini is the lead
that's his name.
of the special effects, he's from Pittsburgh. He's kind of a local legend. He is the head. He plays the leader of the bikers. The guy with the mustache. I believe the character's name is Blade or Blades.
Wow, that's
But
awesome.
yeah, that's Tom Savini, and yeah, he did a lot of the special effects. So it's interesting the way that obviously because of the budget and just how many zombies there are, it seems like they pay more attention to the details of the ones that are going to be up close than like the masses that are kind of end up devolving into just blue or gray makeup, just painted blue essentially. But some of the other ones are more involved. But yeah, so I was like, oh yeah, where's the effects? And then that's where, in the end, when you're seeing people get torn apart, and they do it the same but better in the next one. But I was like, oh wow, they do this, and like you see somebody getting like ripped apart, their guts getting pulled out and whatnot, and there's all kind of extended sequences of that. But this is kind of the climax of the film, I would say, and it kind of I kind of don't like it as much. I feel like the tone gets it gets away from it. Like I still like it, obviously, but my favorite parts of the movie, I think, are the beginning and the middle more so than this part with the bikers. The ending is fine, but I want to talk about that because there's a planned ending that when they tried to shoot it, they ultimately decided not to go that way. But is there anything else you wanted to say about the bikers?
I agree with you that tonally it does, especially having a little bit of the more camp stuff. It does kind of feel like the chaos feels like it's part of the same movie, but it almost kind of feels like a different movie at the same time in parts. Until Steven dies and then it goes to focus back more on Peter and Fran. But I mean, it still works. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it. I
Yeah,
still like
no,
the
it's
movie a lot as
fine.
a whole.
Yeah, it's fine.
Um,
It's just that was never my favorite part, though it's some
mhm.
people. But that's the thing is, it's some people's favorite part.
Yeah, I could see why. It's just as ramped up to 11, like action and gore and shit.
And it's
But I
crazy.
love,
Yeah.
yeah, and I love though the one where the dude gets his legs ripped off from his torso and it's all like one seamless shot, and then they're just ripping out the guts and stuff. I thought that was so well done and like still holds up effects wise.
Yes, yes. And I think I think they do something like that in the next one, with the guy gets his like head ripped off, um, and he's like screaming while his we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this movie a lot. Like the beginning is it really, I'm really fascinated in the world of this, and I think that like that's what I think they tried to make macro zombie movies like World War Z is supposed to be like that, where we're just looking at it from the top of for the entire world, what's going on, and how do we stop this global thing. But it didn't really work. The book, I don't know the book. I never read the book. But I would be
Movie wise,
interested.
yeah.
I would be interested seeing like a movie that's like at the beginning of this, and like so and like I expected Day of the Dead to be more of that, and I think it was intended to be, and the budget ended up cutting the scope of it back, is from what I've read. But that is what I'm most interested in from all these movies, is like the news reels and like the world, and they're talking about what the government's doing, and they're talking about like there's rescue stations and they're being shut down. And I think The Walking Dead explores some of this just because of how it's an extended look at zombie survival, not so much in like the government level, but just seeing what are the next stages as months, years pass beyond. And I think that's really interesting. But not a lot of movies really go into it, I think, just because the budgets or whatever. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I like the to that point. I like the newsreel where the guy with the eye patches on, and he's bringing up talking about just eating people to um like not the zombies, but just like eating the leftover people so they don't turn into zombies to help like with the food shortages and stuff. And everyone's screaming at him at the news station, and then he just keeps saying to himself, just logical,
Yeah,
logical,
he's like losing his
logical.
mind. Well, I think he was saying also like we could feed. I think he was saying we could feed the zombies so they don't attack us. I thought that's
Oh,
what he was
okay,
saying.
yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, but saying something crazy like that, and no, that's when
Yeah.
everyone was just like freaking out. But we were at the point that they were at was of desperation, and
Mhm.
like nobody wanted to hear these ideas at this point.
It's very interesting, real quick, because that is a common plot point of, or a major plot point of the next movie, the feeding of the dead to kind of tame them, so to speak.
Oh, it's
Uh,
it's. I won't say it's a major plot point, but it's a
like
thing.
a
It's definitely a
yeah,
thing in the next one. Um, it's about
but
like it's definitely an element of
mhm.
the next thing. And I want to talk about the next one. So what is there anything else you want to say about Dawn of the Dead?
I was just gonna ask you, how do you feel about this as a sequel to the first one,
I
with the year gap and everything?
yeah, I think it's great. I think it's like perfect in that regard.
Yeah, me too. I like that they don't address it's been 10 years later and you don't really know what time it's set in or whatever, but it definitely feels like a continuation of the first story,
Yeah,
just on a bigger scale. I definitely think he
it's like
nailed
a
that.
reboot sequel, is what I
Mm,
like. That's how I would characterize it. Like same continuity, but it's definitely a reboot.
mm,
Um, and the next one, it's the same kind of feel. Like I wouldn't say like the Day of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead are hard to pin together because it's like 20 years. But when
mm,
you put this one in the middle, it like bridges that gap.
for
Um,
sure.
um, but yeah, what are you giving Dawn of the Dead?
I'm at a 3.5.
Wow. I'm giving it a 4.
Gotcha.
Um,
I like Night of the Living Dead better, and I gave that a 4. So I'm 3.5 feels right for this one. But it's so cool. There's so much cool style with this. I love the Peter character. I love the actor that plays him. It's definitely got so much just style. I can't think of another word other than to say that.
I think it goes farther than Night of the Living Dead in a lot of
Mm,
ways, and I think Night of the Living Dead. Oh, I think I gave Night of the Living Dead 4.5. So
mm,
um, that makes sense. But this is definitely great. I don't think this is a flaw like a flawed film really.
mm,
Um, and yeah, I don't really have any critiques I could give about it. It's just it's yeah, I don't even know why I wouldn't give it anything perfect except for maybe the improvisational style
mm,
is not my cup of tea. I think in this, well, not the whole
mm,
thing, but that's like I said, the biker sequence, the heavy action
mm.
sequences. um the trucks was fine, and the zombie fights were fine, but the biker part in particular is when the movie kind of like not falls
Mm.
apart, but um just loses a little bit of control.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But all right. Let's move on to Day of the Dead.
We made it through the dawn. The sun is up at high noon. These
Um,
movies take place all within 12 hours of the last one, of each one.
they don't, but
I know.
so Day of the Dead is 1985, so not quite 10 years later. But pretty much, solidly in the next decade. And this movie is different in it's I would say smaller and bigger in scope at the same time. Like we're
Mm,
dealing with national shit or global to national to global, shit. Like this is government and scientists and military, but there's not much left. Like we're past that point of the final
mm,
emergency broadcast. In the last movie, we are in that so like it is a sequel in that we are in that next stage past where we were in Dawn of the Dead, where Dawn of the Dead went past that first stage in Night of the Living Dead. Um, and Basically, to give you a quick synopsis of the plot, we have a underground like bunker where there is scientists, a small group of scientists, and that are trying to work on some kind of cure. And then there is a military unit that is assigned to protect them. And where we are is the military is now trying to start to take over the operation now that it seems like there is no really hope for survival. As hope dwindles, the military begins to take over. Yeah, what do you want to start with the Day of the Dead?
I my first thoughts on this though that I want to say is you can definitely tell, like, granted this is, 8 7 8 years later, but visually, like from a camera and lighting standpoint and all that stuff, big upgrade.
The budget is way higher.
Yeah, that shows.
It's like I forget. It's in the millions. I remember that George Romero complained because it was supposed to be, I think, 7 million, but it got cut to 3.5. And that was that's the reason why there was cuts that had to be made in the scope of this film was meant to be a lot grander. And it feels small, but but its ideas are big, and it's what it's dealing with is very big, and I think that's super interesting. It takes place in Florida, Fort Myers, Florida. I went to college with some friends in Fort Myers, and I didn't go to college in Fort Myers. I had friends from Fort Myers, and I thought that was interesting. I wonder why they changed the location from Pittsburgh per Pennsylvania, because the original one is I don't know if it's Philadelphia area, but it's definitely in or Pittsburgh. It's Pittsburgh area, but the second one definitely is. They start in Philly and then they fly over to Monroeville.
I wonder if it was just some exotic feel to the area, because you only really see the outside stuff in the first act of the movie in the beginning when they're flying around, but it definitely feels a lot more like tropical and new. And I wonder if it was just to give a new sense of but also scope of that this is not just in Midwestern America. Now we're seeing how this is handled in other parts of the country. But
I just realized there is a theme of tropical theme, and I don't reveal the ending yet, but there's a character who's from the Caribbean, and who has like a Jamaican kind of accent. And he talks about leaving food. Let's go to an island. Let's just leave all this and find an island somewhere. It's actually a line in the last movie. There's like this terrible actor who says, "Oh no, we're gonna try to find an island somewhere," and like we're in Lake Erie, and they're like, "Oh no." And it's funny because that actually is a major plot point in the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead. With the finding an island thing, which that movie takes place in Milwaukee. Interesting enough.
Yeah, I don't know what island you're flying to in Milwaukee, but
yeah, me either.
it's the Great Lakes. Does it have something?
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't think about it. Just enjoy it.
It's Zack Snyder film. But this is better continuity than that. But it's very bleak. It's this strange juxtaposition of this is the darkest of the Dead movie. It's the bleakest. Things are bad and they're getting worse, and people are the only people that are left are terrible. And now that all the good people are gone, or the bad people outweigh the good people, things are going to fuck. But at the same time, a lot of the actors in this movie, not a lot, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are key roles in this film that are played by either not good actors or campy actors, and giving super over the top, almost comical performances, and it creates this very strange tone. That is, the first time I watched it, I did not like it. I was like, this is worse than the other two. The other two were played straight. It was very like, other than the bikers, there's pretty much Officer Woolley, and there's some ridiculous shit in Dawn of the Dead, but it's not to this level where it's not as sustained, like consistently happening. There's a character that's constantly laughing. Two of them, Steele, and then the guy with the hat and who's shorter and stout. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, he's like Steele's little like henchman buddy.
Yeah. Oh my fucking god.
That I know what you mean. It was very annoying hearing him, but what are you gonna do? I like those characters though, being as like you're like you're like Looney Tunes style henchmen to the captain. Because I just took it as like everyone's getting cabin fever, everyone's
Everyone's
going
losing
nuts.
their mind, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a little over the top. The Miguel, I think Miguel Salazar is his name. He's the boyfriend of the main character. This is our first. This is the first movie in the series to have a female lead, and probably the best written female character of the
Mm.
three female leads in these movies. Barbara, Fran gets gets some balls in the second half of Dawn of the Dead,
Mm.
but the first half
Yeah.
she's largely submissive. But from this movie, Dr. Sarah Bowman, played by Laurie Cardille, is just straight up like flipping people off and telling people to fuck off. I'm a scientist with a Uzi, and don't fuck with me.
Yeah, I definitely liked her character. I think that she is I feel like she's our like Peter from the last movie, where she's like the only one I feel like who's like thinking logically and smart, and everyone else is just kind of getting in her way and fucking it up. But it's an interesting with the relationship that they put her in with the Salazar guy.
Yeah, like he's just nothing but being an asshole to her for the entire film.
Yeah, and he's just like losing it. He can't even like hold. He's like so weak to this point, like he can't hold the wrangling sticks for the zombies and shit. And but I side note, I didn't realize until we watched this movie that there's a Gorillaz song that has a sample in the beginning, M1A1, that's from this movie.
I recognize that as well.
Yeah, this was really cool. I was wondering where that was from. But that is a cool scene though, in that opening when they land in the town.
Hello. Yeah, it is, and it just sounds very desperate and bleak, and it sounds pointless.
Mhm.
Like they're
Yeah,
doing
like
this
everyone
for no
knows
reason.
it's like Dr. Bowman's the only one that like has the drive to keep looking and searching, and everyone else is just like, this is a waste of our fucking time.
So there's like a faction of scientists of the non-military personnel. There's a scientist. There's a couple scientists, a helicopter pilot, and a radio operator who's an alcoholic. That's kind of like really the only thing of his character. He has one note in the entire movie. And that's that he drinks, and he's the radio operator, and he's the only one who knows how to work electronics. And then the two characters that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm curious about, is Captain Henry Rhodes, played by Joseph Pilato, and Dr. Logan,
AKA Frankenstein.
K. Frankenstein, who just feels like a like Wolfenstein end boss. It's like he's mad scientist. It's leaning into it hard. He's extremely campy. Both of these characters are very camp. Yeah. What do you feel about all that?
The Captain of Rhodes, I didn't feel it was that campy at first. Even when it's like he's got his gun to Steele, so that Steele will shoot Sarah because Sarah won't sit down for the meeting. Like I was cool with all that stuff, but then when it gets to when he starts like wanting to see what's going on with all the shit and everything that Dr. Logan's doing, it's just, I feel like, just hamming it up, just screaming everything at all times, and it's just kind of like a one note kind of character. But
yeah, he's just screaming, "I'm in charge! I'm in charge! I can do whatever I want. We're leaving. I tell you, we're leaving." And then, he doesn't leave, but he's just trying to like, you need us because we have the guns and have the muscle, and you'll die without us. Which really is even true. And they're causing all the problems at this point. They're getting into fights. They show that they're growing weed. I thought that was funny at the beginning, because like that's kind of, I think, illustrating that laws broken down, that the soldiers are openly growing weed and smoking weed, and drinking beers, and so they're drunk. And our main character, I think this is an important. So I think this element of this film is kind of like Ben being black in the first film. Like, I think it
Mm.
wasn't intended. It might not have been fully intended by George Romero, and it just kind of worked out. But Lori is the only woman in this entire place, and
Yeah.
they talk about it, like, because they're super jealous that she has a boyfriend and he kind of sucks. So they're kind of even more mean to him because
Mm.
he's getting pussy, and everyone's constantly saying things about it, but the movie doesn't go the whole way to like
Mm.
Lori's in danger of being raped, but it's constantly in the air. Like,
Mm.
as soon as this shit breaks down, one of the first things that could happen is that
Mm.
Sarah, I keep calling her Lori, that's the actress name, Sarah, Dr. Sarah Bowman, could be, raped by these soldiers, and be powerless to stop it. Once somebody, supposedly one of the people in charge of this operation would be powerless, now at this point. And I think that makes the movie so fucking heavy and hard, and like I'm scared for the characters and how things are gonna
Mm.
evolve. I think the camp is the like gives it some levity, but like just knowing that everyone's threatening to kill each other and fuck each other, and it's a bad news. And then you find out that the doctor. So here's a question I had for you. So apparently the head officer of this whole thing was a guy named Major Cooper, and he dies right before the movie starts, and that's why crazy ass Captain Rhodes is taking over and trying to change everything. And
Mm.
it's not obvious who kills Major Cooper, but we find out that that Dr. Logan took Major Cooper's body and is experimenting on it, because like how it comes back to life and everything. And
Yeah.
like, was it? I wasn't sure if that was trying to tell us that the doctor killed Major Cooper, or if or if he died just because it's how it's dangerous in zombie
Mm.
world. But what did you think about that?
I personally thought that he just died of whatever reason, but Dr. Logan was taking the body. Like there was a bunch
That's
of
what I thought too. But I read some people thinking that the doctor killed Major Cooper.
I mean, I think it could go either. It could read either way for sure. But in the scene, because in the scene you see other soldier uniforms in there and other on other dead zombies and bodies and stuff. So it's clearly like, regardless of whether they're dying of him or not, he's taking all dead bodies um, from their camp to just experiment on. I like the effects though with it when he has all the electrodes plugged into his brain, into the Captain Cooper's brain, and he's like, check this shit out, and he like presses a button and he raises
Yeah, the
his arms
effects
and
are
stuff.
cool. The effects are cool and all that. Those scenes, like when the guy like turns, the zombie
Mhm.
turns and all the guts fall out onto the floor.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. But basically, what we find out is Dr. Logan's just trying to train the zombies and see what their capabilities are, and he's testing stuff that doesn't really matter for humanity's survival, but it is like they are learning about the zombies and how they work and what they
Mhm.
can do. And that's the issue. Like Sarah is trying to make with the doctor, and he just doesn't get it. And thinks that everyone should be impressed by what he's discovered. And in particular, he has a zombie named Bub, who he's trained, who is very smart, and is able to learn tasks up to shooting a gun and saluting and
Mhm.
operating a Walkman and whatnot. Bub is a icon. It's kind of like the iconic thing of the movie that a lot of people attach to. I'm actually not crazy about Bub. I like the story. I like the story, but it's just so hard to do and not be silly. Bub's
Mhm.
silly. Bub in the Doctor's whole thing is super silly to me and kind of takes away from the heaviness of the movie.
Mhm.
But it's still like this could happen. Like this could be a thing that people try to do. It comes up in other zombie movies. I think the end of Shaun of the Dead, they have
Mhm.
like the trained zombies working at the supermarket or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
don't know. Well, yeah, tell me about Bub.
I I agree. But like I
I
don't.
don't dislike Bub.
Yeah, I don't hate him, but I feel like this is a product of not.
It's
It's
very
something that
80s.
Yeah, but I was gonna say that, but also it doesn't work with Romero's shooting, like filming style, because he's very much a throw light on everything just to get it done. And I feel like this is something that if it would have been handled more dramatically in the way it was shot, could have read better. Um, but by the time Bub, shoots the character at the end of the movie with the gun, I'm just kind of checked out of Bub and Dr. Frankenstein and everything.
Yeah, like it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't seem real anymore and grounded like the rest of the
More like
film space.
yeah. Like we have some silly performances, but like how it's written is very, very serious and real. Whereas Bub is a silly, and the doctor is silly and like talking about
Yeah.
like his mom, he's like mommy issues and stuff, and like that's fine, but it's just it's played very camp, and I think that it's I think the first time I watched it, I didn't like it. I think this is the worst of the three, and I get why. I get why people didn't like it. And now that I watch it more, I think it's an interesting, like I said, juxtaposition of tone, where it is the bleakest of the three films, but also has the most camp of the three films. And it's kind of a product of its time in a way. And I really so apparently Joseph Pilato, who plays Captain Rhodes, he's quoted as saying like how he got the part. Apparently, he has a really small part in Dawn of the Dead that got cut. I think is in the extended cut, and he said, "How did he get the part of Captain Rhodes?" And he's like, "Well, the guy that they were going to give it to, they couldn't pay him because of the budget cut, so they gave it to me instead."
Man.
Because it's just that much cheaper. A couple. I wanted to bring up one of the soldiers. Is Private Johnson. Is played by Greg Nicotero, who is one of the main makeup guys on The Walking Dead. He's from Pittsburgh as well. And he's done plenty of other movies on top of that. But I always know that they interviewed him a ton for the Walking Dead. Like that's like his main, like the main thing I had always associated him with. That's super interesting to see him young, like in his early 20s. He dies early on in the film, but it's just super cool, and like that's the connection to Tom Savini, and he probably was doing makeup, and then just they gave him a part in the movie too, because probably money reasons. Pretty much everyone besides Sarah, the helicopter pilot, and yeah, that's probably it. The performances are not great.
Yeah. This is definitely, I feel like this is definitely the weakest acting of the three for sure. But in speaking of your juxtaposition of the first two, I feel like, at least to me, I walked away from this, I should say, as almost like kind of a hybrid of the first two, where you've got the small scale of Night of the Living Dead, where it's just one location, and this is like after the opening when they get into the bunker, this is essentially one big location, but it's it still feels tight and claustrophobic.
Dawn of the Dead is one big location, but it's a really big location.
Yeah, it feels because there's so much variety in the mall, and then also so much happening before you get to the mall.
Yeah.
And everything. It feels more grand and big scale, whereas Night feels small, claustrophobic, and more small story scale, focusing on less of the world and more of just like what's happening in this room right now. And I feel like that's what this feels, but with the more grand, or the grander vibes of the Dawn of the Dead, because you between like the increase of the budget, and it looks a lot better, but also just the special effects are the best in this one of all three.
Oh yeah, but
by far.
the ideas, like what it's about, is much bigger than Dawn of the Dead. It's not just people trying to survive; it's people trying to, advance civilization or save civilization, or hold on to like the last bits of civilization. This is it. This is what's left of civilization. And even in Dawn of the Dead, like they mention like, oh, we can't go there. They might be manned. Like we can't go to this airport along the river because there might be cops there, and we don't want to. We did steal shit, and like society hasn't fully broken down at that point. But we are at the point where this is what's left of society, and it is hanging on by a thread, and we are gonna watch that last thread you know, snap.
Mm. Yes. I feel like in this one, the when you have the smaller, it's like a more people that were focused on than in the last movie, but you only really focus on a handful within it. There's a lot of the people are just kind of there in background. Um, but I wanted to ask you, I feel like Dr. Frankenstein's most interesting scene was when he comes in to the meeting with Captain Rhodes, and it is just shutting him down for everything. It's like, well, how would you do that? Where would you go? What would you do this? And I almost wish that the Doctor was more of that for the movie, and I feel like that would sell his character a little bit more rather than just as soon as he gets out of that scene, it's back to just
Mad scientist.
yeah, and it just he does all lucidity seems to be gone. Like he just had it turned on in that moment to just get what he wanted, which was just to keep working. Um,
Well, I think it's supposed to be like he's he's a very smart man, and he's
mhm,
this is why you're supposed to be with us. And so I think it's supposed to illustrate why they're supposed to stay together.
mhm,
But this is also before they fully reveal how deranged Dr. Logan is.
yeah.
But yeah, what else do you want to talk about?
The what do I have here? I was gonna ask about. I have written down Flyboy 2.0.
Yeah,
Um,
they bring that back.
yeah.
They bring that back, and so that's the one I don't like about the movie is the island thing. Is I think I think other than the camp, my biggest criticism is the island plot, and they've sprinkled it, like I said, out throughout the movie.
Mhm,
Um, they're like a little makeshift apartment that they have. The flyboy and the radio guy is like very a beach. There's a giant painting of a palm tree, like an island, and there's
mhm,
music, and they're wearing like Hawaiian shirts or whatever, tropical shirts, and that's what he talks about. He's like, let's just leave all this, and Dr. Sarah's like, we got an obligation. This is our job. Like we can't just abandon our responsibility to humanity, and he's trying to say like we're past that. Like it's over. I don't have
mhm.
responsibility. I don't believe in what you're doing. We don't believe in what you're doing here. Like that's why we don't help you. Like let's just go. And then she finally realizes it. Once I forget what the point is that what Captain Rhodes does. But he gets to a point. Captain Rhodes starts killing people. And obviously, then that's when we have to get out of there. But
Mhm.
he wants to take the guns of the scientists, and stuff like that.
I
Um,
think that happens after Salazar gets bitten, and then they're told to hold up with those guys, and they're
yeah,
like,
and
you
they
have
cut his
to
arm
stay.
off. Yeah,
Yeah, and like you have to stay here. If we see you anywhere else, like you're these guys' problem now. Um, but I do feel like at least Salazar got like a decent redemption for being a dick the whole movie. When he like sacrifices himself in the elevator with like the
well, yeah, but he dooms everyone. Like it almost could have got, and luckily didn't get, the good characters killed, but
yeah.
it could have. That is a thing in all three of these movies that they don't really kill any. I guess in Dawn of the Dead, like Steven and Roger die, but they usually they kind of conveyed a bad quality right before they died.
Mhm,
And whereas in this movie, the three good characters, I guess the one scientist guy gets killed, but then he's not in it that much.
mhm.
And the three main good people, they all get away just fine and live on a desert island and happily ever after.
How did you feel about the hard jump cut from her screaming, getting onto the helicopter, like through the crowd of zombies to just them on the beach? For some reason I immediately was just like, no, it's not a fucking dream. Don't tell me that they did it was all a dream thing.
No, yeah,
Um,
I
but
didn't like it the first time, and I think I knew it was coming this time, so I was more it was desensitized to it.
Mhm,
I just think yeah, it's a kind of a cop out of an ending. It takes away from the bleakness of the
mhm,
movie. Like I think it would have been more powerful if it would have ended not like as simple as oh they kill themselves or they get eaten by the
mhm.
zombies, but something to convey just how fucked it is or something.
Yeah, it almost feels like it was they got into the edit and it's like, oh shit, the last movie ended with people getting away in a helicopter. We can't show that again. And then it was
Oh,
just
okay. So we didn't talk about the actual the planned ending for Dawn of the Dead. So what was supposed to happen is Peter was supposed to kill himself, and then Fran was supposed to run up to the helicopter, and then instead of getting in, she just like shoves her head into the helicopter blades and kills
Jesus.
herself. Yeah,
What a
yeah,
way to
and
go.
the one in the zombie that gets killed by the helicopter blades in the beginning was supposed to like set that up for later.
Interesting. Yeah, that would
Uh,
have been a cool foreshadowing if
I
they
think
did
that
do
would have
that.
been fucking awesome. I think they had issues with the head the head chopping thing and effects.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah, that would have been a dark and depressing
heavy.
ending.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
you
would have
rarely
been.
get.
I think that would have made it even crazier. This, I think, that's the same thing with this. Like the ending takes it down for me,
Mm.
for sure. Is there anything else you really wanted to touch upon with this? All the bad guys get killed in very, very gruesome and horrible
Mhm.
ways. We actually do get to see somebody kill themselves. Captain or
Mm.
Steel, whoever the big guy,
Mm.
shoots himself. Yeah, it's
Uh,
pretty rough.
yeah, it's definitely I definitely think it's the weakest of the three. But not because of any glaring big issue. I think it's just tightening up a couple little things, like cleaning up the Dr. Frankenstein's campiness a little bit. Same with like the bub scenes and stuff, because like that is a cool idea, especially for the time of just like we have no other options.
It's
So
just cute. It's too cute.
yeah,
It's too silly and cute.
yeah, agreed. But it's still cool. Like I love the effect in this one where someone literally takes a chunk out of an arm and it's just like taking a bite out of like a chunk of meat, and like it's super clean
Yeah,
looking
the
and
effects are really fucking good in this one. They don't, you really don't get
Mhm.
to see very much effects, and then at the end they save it all for the ending.
Yeah.
And then you just see they like have extended sequences of zombies chomping. Um,
Mhm. I love that elevator scene though, when Salazar's getting ripped to shreds, and then you just cut to the inside of the bunker, and you just see the platform coming down, and there's like 100 zombies on it, and it's just like a. I thought it was a real cool, like the guys out there's just like a oh shit moment.
like we're fucked. Yeah, we're fucked.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I would say this yeah, like I said, it's the weakest of the three, but I think it has the most the potential on it. Like there's things I like about it, the story the best.
Mhm.
I would be interested. No, I would dare. I think it's this movie's been remade, and I'm sure it's terrible because everything of the dead is terrible outside of these three and the Zack Snyder one. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I would love to see something like this as the world, more of the world building, or more of these different
Mhm.
perspectives of different groups. And that's one thing that's nice about it being so isolated. Is it is just an isolated perspective that isn't just civilians surviving.
Mhm.
Um, oh, I wanted to say before we wrap it up, is boy the influence on horror video games that these three movies have. Obviously, the Resident Evil series,
Mhm.
but so many things I kept thinking about that I've seen in games that reference these. They're just so iconic in terms of the cultural relevance of it all.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. Liked it all.
Do you remember when Dead Rising on Xbox
Oh
360
yeah,
came
yeah.
out,
I
and
wanted to talk about Dead Rising. Yeah,
it had
Dead
a
Rising.
it had a big sticker on the front cover of the box saying that it was not that it had nothing to do with Dawn of the Dead, and I thought that was like hilarious because it's a pretty much like rip off of the mall
Yeah,
stuff.
the whole Rising Dead is Dawn of the Dead the game. Dead
Mm,
Rising is Dawn of the Dead the game. Just like different characters and story. Um, Yeah, it's so much fun. I kept thinking about that. Like they really modeled the mall in Dawn of the Dead, or in Dead Rising, kind of like the back rooms reminded me
mm,
of the same kind of stuff.
yeah, very
Um,
much so.
yeah, Dead Rising and Resident Evil definitely take a lot from these movies. But all right, what are you giving Day of the Dead?
I guess if I'm going in the order of how I was saying, this would end up being like a 3. I don't want to give. I don't feel right giving it a 2.5 because I enjoyed it. I didn't dislike it in any way, and I feel like below a 3 is me starting to actually dislike something.
I
Um,
am gonna give it a 3 also.
I
like
think
I
that's
said, I
fair.
like a lot of the ideas, but as far as like a
Hmm.
film, it has a um lot left to be desired. It's not bad. It's just not as good as the others.
Yeah, I kind of wished he would have taken a more serious tone, like with the first Night of the Living Dead. Um, with this one, especially having a similar like claustrophobic feeling, being trapped underground essentially. Um, but it's still good. It has a
I
lot of
like the
redeeming qualities.
setting. It's not. I don't know. I think it's just. I think there is a great movie in here.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that is just some aesthetic choices, and I think they had to make some budget decisions that ultimately are gonna make it hard. But yeah, that's cool. I'm really glad we watched these. Just a little slice of Pittsburgh history and horror history, and I think these are inspiring because they're pulpy, but they have some cerebral elements to them. There's some social commentary and the simplicity of the first one, and but yeah, loved it. But all right. So next week, do you know what we got next week?
I
Because
do not know what we have
I
next
do.
week.
Next week, we got two new movies: The French Dispatch, Wes Anderson, and Last Night in Soho by Edgar Wright.
Oh, okay. That is next week's movie. All right.
They're both out.
I was looking at the calendar, and there was like a gap in mine for some reason that I was like, "What are we doing this week?" I guess Justin has it picked out. I'm excited for Last Night in Soho, but excited because I'm not excited about it. If that makes sense. The trailers to me, I saw the trailer in the theaters, and it doesn't feel like an Edgar Wright movie, and that's I think what I was expecting when I heard about it. But I'm very open to seeing what he does with it. I think it's a cool concept.
Yeah, I've been really excited to watch both these movies, so this one's gonna be a big one for me. But yeah, all right. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, and all those lovely things. Let me leave a review if you're on the things that you can do that on, and tell a pal. And thanks for tuning in.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.